The army said they would protect them, and actually it has been seen on social media video clips that the army told them you can stay as long as you want, nobody's going to harm you. But how violent could these supporters get, or not only tomorrow, at any moment in the future? This is the main concern.
Rania Sabri in Cairo. Well, for some analysis on the developing situation in Egypt, I've been speaking to Nabila Ramdani, a journalist who specializes in Islamic and Arab affairs.
Well, we know very little about him except that he seems to be a technocrat. He's 67 years old and his background is actually in law. And he worked for the Egyptian State Council before joining the High Constitutional Court. He was the head of Egypt's High Constitutional Court before he was appointed interim president. He helped to draft the supervision law for the presidential elections that brought Morsi to power last year, which included setting a legal time frame for electoral campaigning. So he's very much a safe pair of hands and indeed a technocrat.
Can you tell us how we got to where we are now?
Well, there has certainly been a build-up to the recent protests. It has been referred to as the Tamarrud movement, the rebellion movement, which was planned to coincide with the 1 year of Morsi's arrival in power. He was indeed the first democratically elected civilian head of state in Egypt. But it brought together people from various groups, unlikely allies, people who fought against the old regime, for example, as well as people who supported it, and everything in between, from secularists to leftists. But all of them had something in common. They wanted to see the resignation of now former President Morsi because they had a long list of grievances, essentially. They blamed him for failing on several fronts, and especially on guaranteeing security, law and order in the country. Crime has quadrupled under Morsi's presidency, and also, more crucially, sorting out the economy. The unemployment rate has spiraled. The country suffers from economic deprivation on many fronts. For example, 1 in 4 Egyptians live below the poverty line. There are regular shortages as far as food and petrol are concerned. And there has been built up of dissatisfaction about a president who they viewed as increasingly mistrusted and indeed aloof.
And the military has intervened. Will it continue to loom large over any future government in Egypt?
Well, this has been the perennial problem as far as Egyptian politics is concerned. The army has effectively been ruling the country for 60 years, since the military coup of 1952. And the army is always in the background, if you want, lurking and threatening to take over. And that's exactly what they did yesterday.
And what signal is Washington sending with Mr. Obama saying he's concerned but no outright condemnation of the coup?
Well, it's interesting that Obama has always been sending mixed messages in relation to Egypt, and that was the case when Mubarak was being removed as well. But what is important is that Egypt certainly represents a crucial and indeed very strategic country for the Americans, and especially in relations to maintaining the peace with its neighboring country, Israel.
So what's the future like for Egypt? What's next for the Muslim Brotherhood?
I think that there's no doubt that even though the interim president says he wants to bring about an inclusive government which would include the Muslim Brotherhood, it could be very difficult to achieve, given that at the moment hundreds of Muslim Brotherhood leaders have been arrested, travel bans have been imposed on them, and the borders have been shut by the military, fearing that friends of the Muslim Brotherhood, including radical Islamists, could come into the country and try to win back the Muslim Brotherhood's mandate.
Nabila Ramdani, journalist and Arab affairs analyst.